Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gavel didn't sound like justice. It sounded like a guillotine severing my neck, the sharp crack echoing through the sterile courtroom and shattering the last fragile remnants of my life. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply froze, the breath trapped in my lungs turning into shards of ice as the judge declared him the sole guardian. Across the aisle, Kalen Thorne, the alpha of the Thorne dynasty, the man whose silhouette alone could silence a boardroom, didn't smile. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke charcoal suit, his face a mask of terrifying indifference, and stood up. He had won. He always won. He had taken my money, my reputation, and now he was taking the only thing that mattered, our 3-year-old son, Leo. As the bailiffs moved to usher me out, a numbness spread through my limbs, a defense mechanism against the agony threatening to rip my chest open. I was an omega with nothing left but the scent of despair clinging to my skin. The rain outside the courthouse was torrential, a gray curtain trying to wash away the sins of the city. I stood on the pavement, soaked to the bone within seconds, my cheap suit clinging to my shivering frame. I had no umbrella, no car waiting, and no home to return to that didn't feel like a coffin. A sleek, black limousine pulled up to the curb, parting the water like a shark. The rear window rolled down with a silent, electric hum. Kalen sat inside. The warm, amber light of the interior illuminated his sharp jawline and the predatory intelligence in his steel-gray eyes. He looked at me not with the hatred of an ex-husband, but with the cold calculation of a collector viewing a broken artifact. "Get in, Julian," he said. His voice was a low rumble, a baritone that vibrated in my very marrow. It was the voice that used to whisper promises of forever against my neck. Now, it sounded like a command from a god to a sinner. "I'd rather drown," I replied, though my voice trembled, betraying the bravado. "Leo is asking for you," Kalen said, dropping the name like a bomb. My resolve shattered. You told the judge I was unstable. You told them I was unfit. "I told the judge what was necessary to secure the heir," Kalen replied smoothly, extending a hand. A large, scarred hand that I knew the texture of better than my own. "Do you want to see him? Or do you want to stand in the rain until you catch pneumonia? I have a proposal." I looked at his hand, then at the cruel gray sky. I had no pride left. I opened the door and slid into the leather interior. The scent of expensive whiskey and alpha pheromones, cedar and crushed spices, assaulting my senses. It was a scent that triggered a phantom ache in my glands, a biological memory of the bond we had severed 2 years ago. The drive to the Thorne estate was silent. The mansion loomed on the hill, a fortress of glass and stone that felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum for living things. "What is the proposal?" I asked, breaking the silence as the iron gates groaned open. Kalen didn't look at me. He watched the rain streak against the glass. "You have no money, Julian. My stepmother's lawyers made sure your assets were frozen during the investigation. You're living in a studio apartment with black mold." "I'm an artist," I snapped. "I can make it work." "You were an artist. Now you're a pariah," he corrected brutally. "Here's the deal. You can live here, in the East Wing." My breath hitched. "Live with you? Are you insane?" "Not with me," he said, finally turning to face me. His eyes were dark, unreadable pools. "Under my roof. You will have full access to Leo. You can be his father again. But legally, you are my employee. You will be his live-in caretaker." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You want to make me a servant in the house where I used to be your husband?" "I want my son to stop crying for his mother," Kalen said, his voice dropping an octave, losing its polished edge for just a second. "And I want you where I can see you." "Why?" I whispered. "You hate me." "Hate is a passionate emotion, Julian. I don't have the luxury of passion anymore. I have a corporation to run and a legacy to protect." He leaned in closer, the alpha pressure radiating off him in waves, making my omega instincts scream to submit. "Do we have a deal?" I thought of Leo. His chubby hands, his laugh, the way he smelled like milk and sunshine. "Fine," I choked out. "I'll do it." Living in the Thorne mansion was a psychological torture I hadn't prepared for. The staff, many of whom had served me tea when I was the master of the house, now looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. I was given a room in the servants' quarters of the East Wing, clean, sterile, and humiliatingly small compared to the master suite I once shared with Kaylin. But none of that mattered when I saw Leo. The reunion in the nursery was a blur of tears and small, gripping hands. He had grown so much in the 6 months of the legal battle. I held him until my arms ached, inhaling his scent, grounding myself in the reality of him. For weeks, this was my life. I woke up, I cared for Leo, I avoided Kaylin, and I slept alone in a cold bed. However, the size of the house couldn't mask the tension. It was a slow burn suffocation. Kaylin was a ghost, leaving before dawn and returning after midnight. But his presence was stamped on every surface. One evening, a month into my confinement, a thunderstorm knocked out the power in the East Wing. Leo was terrified of thunder. I sat in the rocking chair, humming an old lullaby, clutching him to my chest as lightning flashed, illuminating the nursery in harsh, strobe-like bursts. The door creaked open. Kaylin stood there, a candelabra in hand, the flickering flame casting long, dancing shadows across his sharp features. He had discarded his suit jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal the muscular forearms I used to trace with my fingertips. "Is he asleep?" Kaylin asked softly. "Just barely," I whispered. Kaylin walked in, the scent of rain and ozone clinging to him, mixing with his natural cedar musk. It was overwhelming in the small room. He stopped beside the chair, looking down at us. For a moment, his mask slipped. I saw exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. I saw a hunger that had nothing to do with food. He reached out, his knuckles grazing my cheek. I flinched. "I'm not going to strike you, Julian," he murmured, his voice rough. "You're too thin. Are you eating?" "I eat what the staff gives me," I said, pulling away from his touch. "Why do you care? I'm just the help, remember?" Kaylin's jaw tightened. He set the candle on the nightstand and leaned against the changing table, crossing his arms. "I saw the news today. The investigation into your embezzlement was dropped. Insufficient evidence." I let out a bitter laugh. "Imagine that. Since I never stole a dime." "I know," Kaylin said. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at him, my heart pounding against my ribs. You know? If you knew I was innocent, why did you let your family's lawyers destroy me? Why did you take Leo?" "Because if you had won custody," Kaylin said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low whisper, "my stepmother would have had you killed." The air left the room. "What?" Kaylin ran a hand through his hair, destroying his perfect styling. "The board was looking for a weakness. They wanted to replace me with my cousin. They needed a scandal. If you had custody, they were going to plant drugs in your apartment, Julian. Real drugs. Enough to put you away for 20 years, or worse, stage an overdose." I stared at him, horror dawning on me. "So you destroyed my reputation to save my life. I had to make you look like a pariah so they would lose interest in you," Kaylin admitted, looking at the floor. "I had to take Leo to get him behind these walls where my security could protect him. And I had to force you back here, under the guise of servitude, because it's the only place in the city where my family can't touch you. You could have told me," I hissed, tears stinging my eyes. "You let me think you hated me. You can't lie, Julian. You never could." Kaylin looked at me, his eyes burning. "If you knew the truth, you would have looked guilty of conspiracy. I needed you to look broken. I needed you to look defeated. You broke my heart to save my life." I stood up, careful not to wake Leo, placing him gently in the crib. I turned on Kaylin, poking a finger into his hard chest. "That is the most arrogant, alpha bullshit I have ever heard." Kaylin caught my hand. His grip was firm, hot. "I never said I was a good man. I said I would protect what was mine. I'm not yours anymore," I whispered, though my body betrayed me. The proximity, the heat, the overwhelming scent of him was making my knees weak. "Aren't you?" Kaylin pulled me closer. Our chests brushed. The air between us crackled with 2 years of suppressed longing and anger. "You divorced me," I reminded him. "I signed a paper," Kaylin corrected. He leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "But look at you. You're trembling. Your scent has turned sweet. You still react to me." "Biological response," I gasped, trying to push him away, but my hands only curled into his shirt. "Is it?" Kaylin moved his hand to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair, tilting my head back. "Tell me to stop, Julian. Tell me you don't want to come home." It was the phrase from the car. "Come home." "This isn't a home," I said, a tear escaping. "It's a prison." "Then let me make it a home again," he breathed. He didn't wait for permission. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision of desperation and dominance. It tasted like rain and whiskey and regret. He kissed me like he was starving, like he had been holding his breath for 2 years, and I was the only oxygen in the world. For a moment, I fought it. I thought of the courtroom, the humiliation, the cold servant's room. But then I felt the desperate thudding of his heart against mine. I felt the slight tremble in his powerful frame. Kalen Thorne, the man who terrified the business world, was terrified of losing me. I melted. I opened my mouth, allowing him to deepen the kiss, my arms winding around his neck. The chemistry that had once burned down our world was still there, dormant but deadly. He lifted me up effortlessly, my legs wrapping around his waist, and pinned me against the wall, away from the crib. "I hate you," I sobbed into the kiss. "I know." Kalen growled against my lips, his hands roaming over my back, remapping the territory he had lost. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning your forgiveness. But I am never letting you leave this house again." "Is that a threat?" I asked, pulling back just an inch to look into those steel-gray eyes. "It's a promise," he said. We stayed like that as the storm raged outside, 2 broken pieces of a puzzle trying to fuse back together in the dark. The road ahead was treacherous. His family was still hunting for blood, the public still thought I was a disgrace, and the trust between us was fractured. But as Kalen buried his face in my neck, inhaling deeply, I realized that the cage he had built wasn't to keep me in. It was to keep the wolves out. And for the first time in 2 years, I breathed. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, by becoming a monster to protect him. If you enjoyed seeing Kalen destroy the world just to keep Julian safe, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who ruined your life to save it? Or is a lie that big unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Tall alpha, sharp jawline, messy dark hair, white dress shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, muscular forearms, expression of intense longing and regret, holding man 2 against a wall. Man 2, slightly shorter omega, slim build, soft features, wearing simple oversized knit sweater, tears in eyes, looking up with conflicted expression, hands gripping man 1's shirt. Background is a dimly lit nursery, lightning flash through window casting blue shadows, silhouette of a crib, dramatic atmosphere, emotional tension, cinematic lighting, intricate details.